if we aren't the ones bringing them and patiently teaching, and as a community patiently bringing our young people into the church from the moment they're baptized, that's our promise. That's our vow at baptism. That's what we're promising to do.
Welcome to Beyond Sunday, a podcast for parents like us, striving to weave that Sunday and very Lenten experience into the everyday moments of our week. I'm your co-host, Nicole Joyce.
And I'm Rakhi McCormick, your other co-host. And it is so very Lenten, so get comfortable, grab a snack, put on an episode of Bluey if you must. But join us as we laugh, talk, and sometimes cry about our experiences raising Catholic families and discovering God within our everyday lives. All right, Nicole, turnabout is fair play. You made me do toddler trivia.
Uh-oh.
It's time for a nod to the king of diocesan podcasts, Father Steve Pullis, with some rapid fire questions. Are you ready?
Wait, can we get some open door policy music in here, Ron? Yes.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I think he will. I might have to stay clear of him for a little while. maybe change my number. All right, you ready? Parenting a toddler edition. Rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Guilty pleasure toddler snack item.
Sweet potato puffs.
Ooh, those
Remember
were
those?
good. Yes, I do like those. Craziest place you've changed a diaper.
Ooh, back pew of a church. Only one time.
Doesn't seem that crazy.
Only one time.
Yeah.
It was like a dire emergency.
Okay. I was gonna say, is it like a Disneyland ride or something? But no. Back pew. Awesome. Would you rather relive the 3-6-9 month sleep regression or relive potty training?
Ooh. I'm going to have to go potty training.
I would agree on that. 100%.
Although my potty training experience was not as messy as some people have shared with me. So if I have to relive someone else's potty training experience.
No, just ours.
Okay.
Just our own.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel like ours was not terribly traumatic. It took a while. We had a lot of pull-ups for a while, but whatever.
Yes.
Whatever works. All right. Kids show and movie theme or movie theme song that you still know all the words to.
Octonauts.
I don't think we ever really watched Octonauts.
Really?
No.
It was so fun. It was so cute
Team
and
Umigumi,
gentle.
yes, but not Umizoomi. Not Umigumi.
I know. I was like, wait, what is that?
What is that? No. Yeah. Okay. Strangest thing you've ever pulled out of your kid's ear or nose?
Oh. You know those craft pom-poms that you like glue to things?
Yes.
One of mine had one up his nose. And then also a banana, like a piece of banana.
Oh.
Yeah.
Fascinating. I don't think we've ever had to pull anything out of noses or ears.
Really?
No.
You might be.
Other than like fingers and,
Wow.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
No, we made it through without anything going in those
That's a
places.
rarity, actually. Okay.
It is. They put their fingers in everything, but, not Legos. And then best advice you were given for the toddler years.
Ooh. I think this goes back to last week when we were talking about this, to just pray on your feet. Always be praying on your feet. I think that has been life-changing for me and for my kids.
I think for me it was this moment will also pass.
Ooh, yeah.
Like sometimes those toddler years can just feel intense.
Yeah.
Everybody's emotions are intense. There's yours. Sometimes you regress to toddlerhood, right? As you're dealing with your toddler.
Yeah.
Because I said so.
It's so nice to see other parents who have like come out of that on the other side, and like their kids are, sitting nicely at church and are mostly polite to you.
Yeah, right.
I mean, definitely mostly, right? Like mine are big now, and even they sometimes I have to give the mom a look like, hey, we are not playing table football on the pew in the middle of.
I don't understand the problem.
So we still have those moments sometimes where it's like, what were you thinking?
Yeah.
But for the most part, yes, you come out the other side, and it's so nice to see other moms or parents who have done that and be like, oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I can aspire to that.
Yeah, this isn't forever, and there's grace in it right now too. But that was my best one. Like, just if you're having a rough moment, take a breath, take 10 minutes, because those 10 minutes you'll be somewhere new in 10 minutes.
Yes, that is hopeful. It gives you some hope.
It is.
I think.
All right. So talking about the toddlers, last week we talked about
being a parent with toddlers.
Right. So this week let's talk about them.
And how reasonable they are.
Oh, so logical. So very logical. The brains are fully formed, and clearly their favorite color is not marble. Like all the colors, everything all at once.
I love our
there
tiny
is no logic.
people.
Oh my gosh. Oh, but they're so creative. Like I do, like that is such a gift though. Like no logic isn't there, but boy, the wonder and the imagination. How crazy awesome is that?
Yes.
Like the world is their oyster, no limits.
Yes, I love it. I do appreciate that. Yes. So during Lent, though, it's kind of hard, right? Because we're talking about some pretty deep stuff, especially the closer we get to the Triduum, like talking about crucifixion and death, talking about suffering and being beaten and being humiliated. Those are all really big topics. So, and even just the idea of like making a sacrifice during Lent can be challenging to talk to them when they're small about those things, because it can feel, if we don't do it right, it feels like, oh well, you're just being mean, and you're like you're saying that you're being mean because of church, which makes me not very happy.
I don't like Jesus right now.
Yeah, like this doesn't sound
me
fun.
I can't play with my favorite toy. Yeah, what is that?
This isn't fun. Being Christian isn't fun. So we have to figure out how we do this in a way that makes sense for them.
Absolutely, but I also think that we have to recognize that sometimes they have a more innate understanding and acceptance of faith. You know, Jesus said, let the children come to me, so they have not been marred by the desires of the world or what the world says about Jesus.
It's true. When they're little, it's easy to talk about things like the real presence in the Eucharist, even, because all you have to do is lean over during Mass and say, that's Jesus right there. And they're like, cool.
Right. Or they might ask how, but then when you tell them how, they're like, oh, sure,
awesome.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because nobody has told them that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and they've not grappled with a lot of difficult things by that point, usually, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that there is just an innate trust in a purity of heart to be able to enter into those spaces. Maybe not like Mel Gibson, The Passion, gruesome, right? Like we don't need to get that graphic.
Right.
But I don't think we have to shy away from the reality of what Jesus' sacrifice meant either. Yes. Because I think that wonder is what I've seen that comes in to be like, wow.
Yes. Wow. But you don't have to, don't be afraid to talk about it, I guess is my encouragement. Don't be afraid to talk about it. And
the boys might get really fascinated by talking about the gruesome. I'm not going to lie. Like they might be like, how many times was he whipped?
Right.
How did it feel when the nails went in? I'm like, well, do you like it when your sister pinches you? No. So worse than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then for them to have their own personal thoughts about how difficult that must have been, how painful that must have been. And then for us to come back and say, and he did that because he loves you. Right. He did that for you.
Just you.
Yeah.
I mean, me too. But if I wasn't here, he'd do that just for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that they do, while maybe their brains can't wrap around the enormity, whose brains can.
Right.
Like even my brain doesn't wrap around the enormity of what that means. But in their smallness and in their openness, I think there is this profound acceptance and gratitude. And the pondering, like they continue to ponder that, like a little bit like Mary, like she pondered those things in her heart. And I've noticed, like with when they were little, especially, they'd come back like 4 days later, asking about the same thing you talked about, which you had talked about, but like 4 days later, they've
been thinking about it, right? It's been like stewing, and they have another question, or they have a.
When Jesus, was he cold?
Yeah.
Like I don't know. Probably.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. And so they do. Do you have a favorite experience that you remember with your kids during Lent? I can think of a few. I'm for us, but
I do. And it's actually also a church horror story.
Oh no!
Which we could do like a whole.
We could have an entire
episode.
We could have an entire podcast just about church horror stories. We could invite guests and they could tell theirs too. Come on, every mom out there has it.
We all have one.
We do. Multiple.
So I think my youngest was 3. So that meant I had 3, 5, or 3, 7, 9, and 11. And the 9-year-old.
Ages are hard.
Yeah, I know. I had to do the math in my head, and that was a lot of it.
Don't
hard. Ask me what years they were born. So the 9-year-old was an altar server at the time. And they asked if he would help serve at the Good Friday service. So we all went together. And we got there early for Stations of the Cross, and we were praying the Stations of the Cross. And my 11-year-old has high-functioning autism, so he's a very concrete thinker. And it took him until about 11 to really wrap his head around the crucifixion as a whole, really, and to really imagine what that would be like. And so as we were praying the Stations of the Cross, we got to him to, Jesus being nailed to the cross, and he just started weeping. Like he just was crying, and he was just like, this is so sad. I can't believe people did this to him. He was just so upset. And here I am, like, overjoyed, right? Because he's experiencing this wonderful, beautiful truth in a way that only he could experience, and it took him until he was 11 to get there, but that was his moment where he really came to this realization, like, he really did this for me, and it really hurt him, and he did it because he loves me,
right?
And so he's just like weeping through the Stations of the Cross. We make it through the service, veneration, everything. I mean, this is a long day for kids ages 3 to 11, right? And we finally get out of there. The 3-year-old was actually pretty chill. Yeah, like I think she fell asleep on the floor in front of us.
Resting in the Spirit. It's all good.
And God bless the 9-year-old. He's up there like holding the cross with Father, as people come up and venerate. And so we're leaving, and we are walking out to the car, and this elderly parishioner is like, I can't believe you brought your kids to this. And at first I thought she was kind of complimenting me, like, oh, good for you. And I was like, well, thank you. And she was like, no, that was really cruel. Why would you make them sit through all that?
Oh my goodness.
And I was so stunned. I didn't really know what to say. So I just put them in the car and came home, But then upon later reflection, first, I was so grateful to be there when my son experienced that moment where it became real to him, and he recognized Jesus as our Lord and Savior. And that was such a gift that I got to be there for that. But then secondly, it was like, I can't imagine how many other parents have had that type of experience and never came back.
Right.
And so it was very eye-opening to me on 2 levels at the same time. It was a lot to unpack. And I think I probably talked my husband's ear off about it for weeks, trying to really unravel all of those layers.
100%, because I think there is still that sense of church isn't for kids. Mm-hmm. But it is.
Yeah.
And again, like Jesus said, let the children come to me.
Yeah.
And no, Mass isn't designed to be fun for kids. They have to sit and stand and be quiet and all that. But it is absolutely for our children. And if we don't bring them when they're little to begin to have those experiences and to encounter Jesus, and like your son, even at 11, having that profound encounter, how is he ever going to have that?
Right.
If we aren't the ones bringing them and patiently teaching, and as a community patiently bringing our young people into the church from the moment they're baptized. That's our promise. That's our vow at baptism. That's what we're promising to do.
And what wouldn't I give to have more people have that experience the way he had it?
Right.
It was last Lent. I was leading a small group, and I mentioned that experience with my son crying at the Stations of the Cross, and one of the men in the group said, "What I wouldn't give to be able to weep."
Right.
Hearing that. He said, I wish I could authentically weep hearing that. He's like, but we grow up hearing it for so long that I think sometimes we just kind of distance ourselves so far from it.
Right.
Or it just becomes something that we've heard so much that we're no longer able to enter into that experience the same way. He's like, I wish I had that.
Yeah.
I wish I had the gift your son had to really enter into an experience in that way. And that just was so affirming to hear someone say that, because, number one, whenever you have a child with a disability, you always worry, how is their experience going to be? I don't want to ruin this for them. I want them to have a relationship on whatever level is best for them. And I know our Lord will come to him, but it's just you always worry. Is he ever really going to wrap his head around this? And he did, and it was such a gift. So
and what a gift that you were there to witness it.
Yes. Yeah. And it was in fully adult words, right? We weren't using a children's Stations of the Cross. He wasn't watching a cartoon. He wasn't watching Mel Gibson's Passion of the Christ.
Don't let your children watch that.
But it was just it was the traditional church language Stations of the Cross, and he heard that and he knew, and I was so grateful for that. So let's talk about our little people some more.
Okay, I was gonna say our my experience with little people is around the Stations of the Cross too. So I think there's something there. There's something that's really tangible about the walk that Jesus walked.
Yes.
And each of those little moments. And for us, we used to take our kids up to St. Cyril and Methodius. They have outdoor stations. And so we would do those. And it was at the crucifixion, both, at this time we only had 2, and they were little. Yeah. But they got to the crucifixion, and they on their own, they just kneeled down and they spent 10 minutes just on their own. There wasn't the weeping, but it was this understanding that something profound had happened in that moment.
Yes.
And they were spending time. while mom and dad were walking around to the other
Right.
station. But I think we had moved on, and all of a sudden I was like, wait, where are they?
Yeah.
Well, they're still there.
They're still in that moment.
They stayed.
Yes.
They stayed.
They were still there.
Like,
wow.
Like the women, they stayed.
Mm-hmm.
And similar experience, we did outdoor stations at the Divine Mercy Center as well. And so plus it's outside, so it seems like really manageable for little children. So if they need to run a little, they can run a little, but then you're still entering into this contemplative experience of the passion of Jesus.
Yes, beautiful, wonderful.
So again, I think there is something that we as adults find gruesome, and it is gruesome.
Yeah.
It is. But there is this wonder and this understanding that children have.
Yes.
Of what's actually happening.
Yes. And even if they can't articulate it
right.
in really, big, flowery words,
right.
they recognize that there's something different about this, right? That this king was crowned with thorns, that this king was born in dirt and muck, right? And
he came as a baby.
Yes. And that instead of us all, bowing down to him, that he laid himself down for us. And that is, they recognize that as something different. And I think
there's something to be said for the simplicity of that too. And gosh, Meg's probably gonna kill me because I'm not probably gonna get the name right, but I think it's St. Agatha Kimagi.
Yes. Yes.
I only know Jesus and Mary.
Yes.
I only know Jesus and Mary. And there's something so profound.
Yes.
And maybe we overcomplicate.
Yeah.
What the spiritual life is in our children, help us to distill it to I only know Jesus and Mary.
Yeah, I think there is a little bit of fear, like they're so innocent and we want to protect that.
Right.
And rightly so.
Yeah.
But there are some really beautiful truths that are connected to the experience of Christ's death and resurrection and of the martyrs,
right? Like
St. Agatha Kim. And so I think there's space for us to talk about it in a way that makes sense for them and let them ask those questions.
Well, and I think too, they're not immune to understanding that there's suffering in the world.
Yes.
They're not immune to that. They see their friends suffering. They know that there's suffering in the world, that at least in our home, because it's something that's important to us, they understand that there are people around the world that are suffering.
Yeah.
And you see it on the news. I mean, my goodness, you can't turn on the television but to see that people are suffering and to give them some context of what do we do with that suffering.
Yes. That is a perfect lead into what we want to talk about, which is like what are some real world ways that we can kind of bring our kids into Lent at whatever age they are, but especially when they're young. How do we really bring them into experiencing it, that this season in our church calendar is different.
Right.
And that we're called to do something
and it's not just that you can't have cookies.
Right. It's not just that we're not eating cookies after dinner. It's not just that we're not playing video games.
Right. That there's a purpose for that. And so in our home, we do Operation Rice Bowl with Catholic Relief Services. And what I love about that is that it's kind of out of the box.
Yeah.
Like I don't have to do all the research myself.
Right.
And so they will highlight different areas in the world that are suffering in some way and what they're doing in solidarity with them. And I love that they work with the people who are there. They're not coming in to run a program. They're actually building relationship. And they're learning what the cause of that suffering is. So they're going into the root cause. And that they're surrounded in prayer. So we can pray with these people and for these people. We can give alms. We can maybe do an extra chore.
Yeah.
And raise money to go help them do what they're doing there. And we grow in solidarity and understanding of what our brothers and sisters are going through and to talk about what does it mean to be in right relationship.
And we do this as an outward sign.
Yes.
Right? An outward sign of the love and the salvation that we've received.
Right.
Freely and totally undeserved.
Absolutely.
Like we were given so much and we can do this. We can give something to those who need. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a good way too to get our children thinking outside of themselves. Because that is not just with toddlers, but and even with adults. Like I think that we can really become myopic and looking internally and Lent being just for me.
And like, how am I going to feel good if I do these things?
Right. Not how am I growing in my relationship, which is important.
Yes.
But also then the outward sign that Jesus gave his life. How are we giving our life to be light and leaven for the world?
I like that. So I have some brainstormed thoughts here.
Okay.
Some things. These are all things that we have tried one Lent or another. And if you're listening and this is like maybe your first Lent where you have a toddler who's like really starting to understand these things and you really want to do things, I have 2 pro tips for you. One is don't do all the things.
Yes, that was going to be mine.
Just do like the one thing.
Pick one.
Yeah. And 2, it doesn't have to be the same every Lent.
No, and
right?
it doesn't even have to be the same every week.
Yeah, every Lent can be different. Every week can be different. So some things that we've done at varying stages of having little people in our house. One is to learn a new prayer together as a family.
Oh, I like that.
So you can pick any prayer you'd really like your kids to know and just practice it throughout Lent. It can be right before bed as part of your bedtime prayer. In our house, we learn new prayers before dinner, because everybody's hungry, and so they're very motivated to learn a new prayer right before dinner. And so it's actually worked out really well, because in our family faith formation program now at our home parish, the kids learn a different memory verse every month at home. And last month, the little people were supposed to learn the Hail Mary, which my daughter's been praying since she was old enough to talk. So she was like, I want to learn what the big kids are learning. So she and the older one, the 11-year-old, both memorized all the Beatitudes. Yes, which was super impressive. And they did it by practicing every day before dinner for a month. And they recited them all, which I thought was really beautiful. So any prayer you want to try, pick something that's meaningful to you. Maybe the Anima Christi, maybe it's the Memorare, but something small like that, where we're teaching them those words and that language to use, so that as they get older and they're praying on their own, they have those words
to fall back on.
Yes, when they're struggling. Other ones are like committing to praying a rosary as a family, or even just a decade of the rosary.
Oh, sure. The one that, and so even throw one in that we do is exploring the saints.
Yes.
So we get into the lives of the saints, or maybe even the martyrs. And I know 1 year, 52 Sundays focused on the lives of the martyrs.
That will be next year. Will be the martyr edition, I believe.
Yeah. The martyr edition.
Yes.
That sounds foreboding.
It does.
No, but just taking a look at the examples of the lives of people who lived heroically with heroic virtue. So.
And there's a really cute book for that. By your friend Meg.
Yes.
The Saints Around the World book is so beautifully done. Highly recommend that one. It's got saints literally from every continent except for Antarctica, because there are no canonized penguins in Antarctica.
I would like to canonize a penguin. She tells me that's not possible.
Yes, there are no canonized penguins in Antarctica, but there are saints from everywhere, and they have the most beautiful little illustrations.
Yeah, Lindsay did such a gorgeous job with all of that.
Beautiful. Yeah. My kids love that book. It is always somewhere in my house, because they are always reading it and leaving it somewhere. Right. So if I trip over a book, 9 times out of 10, it's that one. Yes, they love it.
Awesome.
And then the other one is for the Stations of the Cross. If you really want to introduce them to that, and you're not ready to come to Stations of the Cross of the church, or maybe you are, the OSV Kids Stations of the Cross by our local homegrown author, Colleen Presprich, is really beautifully done. Yes.
It is beautiful. And then one other thing that we've done are sacrifice beads, which I think is maybe an example of St. Therese.
Yes.
And so like every time you do a work of mercy, you move your bead. And so you want to have completed the decade.
I really like that.
Yeah, so those are some tips for prayer. Now, what about fasting and almsgiving?
Let's talk about fasting, because I think it's also a challenge as parents too. Like if you are pregnant or breastfeeding. Right. If you have any type of dietary restrictions, or your child has dietary restrictions or food allergies, sometimes it can be really difficult to figure out how to fast. Yeah. And again, you don't have to do the same thing every Lent or every day even. Yeah. And we have this really cute book, Bringing Lent Home, with Mother Teresa. But there's like a whole series.
There's a whole series, right?
Of Bringing Lent Home with different saints. And every day there's a suggestion for something that you can fast from as a family. So like one of them, my kids don't like this one when we get to it, is to fast from complaining.
Oh, yeah.
They're not fans.
No.
They're like, no, that's hard. Can't we
You're complaining. Stop.
Right? They're like, can't we just like give up cookies or something? That'd be so much easier. So they're some of them are a little bit more challenging. Right. But we've given up screens for Lent. We've given up all TV for Lent.
Yeah. So one that we've talked about is giving up any non-essential spending.
Oh yes, I did that once.
Yeah,
actually I did that just
so like
me
no
once,
Amazon,
because,
I guess really.
Yes. which made trips to Target very sad, right?
Yes. So sad. Our own tantrums at Target.
Yes. And we talked a little bit about almsgiving already, like with Operation Rice Bowl.
Yeah, but like you can also get really creative. It doesn't have to be money, although money is, I think, part of that intention is to share the gift that God has given us with those who are less fortunate.
But giving your time.
Right. Giving your time, making cards for people who are maybe, bringing light. So sending cards to nursing homes or hospitals and things like that too.
I love that. We always like to help out at the parish fish fry.
Oh, nice.
And, clean the tables and things, because those proceeds go to support the food pantry.
Oh, right.
So it's always nice to do something like that where the kids are really actively involved. They love to race to see who can wash the table off first and who's going to collect all the trays.
I'm going to have your kids talk to my kids because mine are not equally motivated.
I think we might have made one of the Knights of Columbus a little sad that my kids kept taking his job because he thought he was the one who was going to wash the trays last time.
But that is, you know what though, like when we're talking about raising up kids in the church, that is definitely something that we as adults need to be mindful of, is that none of the roles belong to us.
Yes.
And that if we're not training them up when they're little, then we're not going to have anybody left to do it.
We should be training ourselves out of a job, right?
Absolutely. And God will call us to something else for sure.
Yes.
All right. So what's our actionable item? What are we doing this week?
I think just thinking about how we can embrace Lent in the space we're in. You know, maybe we mentioned an idea here that you're like, oh, I want to try that. I think definitely taking that and trying to find that space where you as a family can do or give of something, whatever it is within the life you have right now, the Lent you are living right now.
Right.
I don't know how many times I'm going to say this year, but like, you don't have to do all the things.
Yeah.
Do the thing that means the most. Do the thing that you can do right now. That's an authentic, sacrifice or an authentic gift, and is an outward sign that you recognize what our Lord has done for you.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to Beyond Sunday. We hope your week is filled with long naps from your littles and kind words from your big kids and your spouses.
Oh, amen.
Find more episodes at 52sundays.com/podcast or subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.